Hey friends, welcome back to the Naked Marriage Podcast. We're Dave and Ashley Willis, and on this podcast, we address the truth about sex, intimacy, and lifelong love. And today we're continuing our conversation on burnout. I had a great conversation last week. I encourage you to go back and listen to part one of this burnout series last week. I think it would be a great encouragement to you, and it really sets the stage for what we're talking about today, which is how to avoid and prevent burnout, and then how to really communicate with your spouse about it once it's there. Just being honest, taking that honest self-assessment, like, hey, this is where we are. If you've got any feedback for us, if you want to add any insights to what we're talking about, easiest way to communicate with us is on Instagram. We're at Dave and Ashley Willis on Instagram. Or you can also leave comments on these videos on our YouTube channel. Most folks listen to this podcast, but you can also watch them on the Dave and Ashley Willis YouTube channel and leave comments there and be part of the conversation there as well. So, sweetie, week 2, burnout.
Yes. Man, I am glad we're having this conversation because I do think it's something that's not talked about enough, but is so prevalent kind of in our culture, especially today. And so I want to start by talking about, we talked all about like the signs and things like that. Let's start off by, let's say last week you listened, maybe you had your spouse listen, hopefully, and you guys are kind of at the state where at least one of you is like, yes, I'm burnout, like I'm in a burnout season. How do we open up that conversation? Because communication is key in this. And, I'm of the firm belief too, that communication, especially when it comes to marriage, is a huge part of our healing process. And, even if it's just one of you who knows that you're in a burnout season, it doesn't mean that only you need to handle this burnout season that you're going through. As we always say in marriage, it's never his problem or her problem. It's always our problem. And so you need to bring your spouse into the picture. And odds are, when you go to them and you say, listen, I think I'm in a burnout season, they're not going to be shocked by that. They'll probably be like, oh, that makes sense. Like, and don't be upset if they're like, oh, well, that's why you've been so tense or whatever, it'll probably be a light bulb moment where they're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense because you've just not been yourself. And I've been concerned, like if it was something I'm doing or, whatever it is. But I would just open it up by being honest in a loving way and saying like, listen, I think I'm burnt out. Like I'm trying to figure out exactly where I kind of got myself here, but I'm pretty sure, I'm burnt out right now. And I just want you to know about it. And here's kind of what I'm feeling. When I'm feeling like I'm not getting enough rest, it's like I never have enough rest. And I feel like I'm just irritable all the time. I feel like even when you didn't do anything wrong, I'm kind of mad at you and I don't like that feeling. And I want to move past this, and so I'm going to have to make some adjustments in my life and maybe in our life. And I want to talk to you about that because, one of the biggest things I feel like that causes burnout is that we overextend ourselves. And that usually has to do with our schedule. Like we're committing to too many things.
Yeah, for sure.
We're taking on too many things. And I know that certainly led to my own burnout is like there was too many things all at once. And so with that, it's not just a thing on our calendar that we have to attend, but that's another thing where you have to expend emotional energy and you have to give it your, mental focus. And so you're just, physically, mentally, emotionally tapped out. And so I think one thing too, that often leads to us overextending ourselves when it comes to our time and our efforts is that we're trying to please people. And Dave and I, we've talked about this on here. We are, recovering people pleasers.
We're recovering people pleasers. We are. And especially in ministry, it's like, it's so easy to just feed that kind of people pleasing, personality trait. And to justify it, like, no, this is just helping people. This is just serving people. But really, people pleasing, it can get in the way of us saying yes to God.
Yeah.
Because, like, think of it this way: Jesus lived the perfect life. God in the flesh, everything that he did was the right thing. And yeah, he was available and helped people, but he was willing to disappoint people all the time.
Yeah.
When you read the Gospels, there were all kinds of people that had an agenda for Jesus's life that were good things. No, Lord, stay longer and teach more over here. Stay longer. We want you to stay longer and heal all these folks over here. And over, he would say, no, that's not what I'm doing. I need to go on to this next place, or I need to pull away and reconnect with the Father and just have some alone time, or I need to spend some time with my disciples. And he was not afraid to disappoint people.
Yeah.
And knowing he loved them so much, he was ultimately going to give his life for them. But even in that love, he didn't come to be a people pleaser. He came to be a people saver, but not a people pleaser.
Yeah.
And I think that there's such freedom in his example of saying, sometimes we're going to disappoint people. Sometimes we're going to have to say no to things that are good things just because we know I'm not superhuman and I don't have the capacity to do that and be at my best while still being at my best for my family, because someone is going to pay for every decision we make. Someone's going to pay. It could be you paying with your own health and sanity. It could be your family paying with time that you should be spending with them that you're giving to these other people, but someone's going to pay. And so we just have to keep that in mind with every decision, because if we don't put healthy boundaries around our calendar, nobody will. Nobody will.
Yeah.
And
so true.
So folks, and I've had to learn this the hard way, that folks aren't going to know. They're not going to know, they've already got too much going on. We're going to have to be the ones to say, I can't do that right now. I had to just like a day or two ago, I had this guy who's a friend and does marriage ministry. And he's kept wanting to get a call scheduled with all of us to talk about like ministry stuff. And I finally had to say, like, listen, we just can't do that right now. Like, we're for you guys. If you want to text us, I can answer some questions via text, but we're just in this season, we're having to say no to most things. And he was very gracious. I'm sure he was disappointed, and it was awkward for me as a people pleaser to do that, but it was the right thing to do. And so I'm just saying, give yourself permission to disappoint some folks in the name of having a healthier rhythm and being the best version of yourself with your family, with just your health overall.
And this is something we have, we're still in process.
Oh yeah. We're not great at this.
Every fiber of our being, we're such people pleasers that it feels wrong, but at the same time, I will tell you, it feels like relief too, because even before you texted that precious couple, they're awesome. We talked about it, and because we really care about these people. We're like, how do we say this in a loving way, but also put a boundary there? Because right now we need that. And then what you find too is most of the time they'll come around and get it, and sometimes even if they don't, that's between them and God. Like, especially if you're not outright wronging someone. It's not like you're being unkind and just trying to be mean or something. When you know in your heart that you're not doing something that is, mean or cruel and wrong, it's nothing that's going against God, then it's between them and God what happens with that and how they do it.
Yeah.
And I think something that used to torment me that I think led to burnout all throughout my life when I've had seasons of burnout is toiling over, oh my gosh, what do they think about that? And hopefully they understand. And like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just leads to anxiety.
And that's between them and God.
It is. It's not our business.
It's not our business, like what they think about anything really. It's like, we have to make the best choice, right? With, for us, for our family. And ultimately know, like, everything you do is going to disappoint somebody. Like, even, saying no to a salesman whose only agenda is try to sell you something, that's going to disappoint them. Mm-hmm. But buying something that you can't afford just to make someone you don't even know smile because they're getting a commission, that's a reckless way to live.
Right.
So yeah, you got to be okay just saying, no, I can't do that right now.
Like, that's not my best yes. I read a Lisa Turkhurst book years ago called The Best Yes. And it really came at a time when I needed to know that. And I remember I shared it with you, some of the things I learned from that book, but it really helped me as a recovering people pleaser to really evaluate what's my best yes here. Like, I could give a yes. You can give a yes anytime, but what is my best yes? Because I don't want to just, when you say yes to everything, your life is going to be chaotic. Yeah. And so it really challenged me on that. I want to share, speaking of people pleasing, the Bible actually has a lot to say about this. And there's one verse in particular that I found in my burnout study that I shared with you last week that I found on YouVersion. You can go on the YouVersion, YOU version app, just look up burnout and you'll find this study. But one of the verses they shared, it really resonated with me and reminded me about how people pleasing is not of God. It's just not. And it's Galatians 1:10. It says this: am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Or am I trying to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ.
Boom, man. That's
the Apostle Paul dropping a mic there. Like,
who's our authority?
Who's our authority? Right.
People pleasing really in some ways is people worship.
Oh yeah.
Because it really is.
That stinks when you look, when you think about it. Whoa, you're stepping on my toes, sweetie. But in a good way.
In a good way. Well, you got beautiful manicured precious toes. I don't want to mess up that beautiful paint job on those toes.
No, but I need it. I'm telling you, we hold each other accountable to this because this is something where we're similar, but at different times we'll be like, I think that people pleasing is flaring its head. You know what I'm saying? Like, we'll hold each other accountable in this because it isn't of God. And I think we have a culture that loves people pleasers. I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah.
What boss doesn't want, we call it eager beavers. Like, let's be eager beavers in the sense that we like want to do our best job, but we can't just keep on trying to please the boss. We can't just keep on trying to even please our spouse. Like, even just trying to please our spouse is worshiping them in a way. And that's not what God calls us.
Yeah. Now we are called obviously to serve each other, to love each other.
Serving is not necessarily pleasing though.
Right. But in the name of people pleasing, there have been some marriage dynamics where a narcissistic or very self-focused spouse has manipulated and twisted that to make the other spouse feel like their whole duty is to constantly just serve, and please them. And please them.
Make me happy.
And it creates this really toxic dynamic. Yeah. And so, I mean, we should want to please our spouse. That's a good thing. But when we get on this treadmill of running frantically to try to do everything constantly just to not disappoint our spouse, then even that can get out of balance.
It can. And maybe that's why you feel burnout. Like maybe, in listening to this and maybe having a time of prayer, you realize like, wow, I've just been trying to please my spouse. Like maybe your spouse has put some unrealistic expectations on you. And who knows, maybe they don't even realize they're putting that on you.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not even trying to put that on you, but you, because you're afraid you're going to lose them. I think sometimes based on our backgrounds, how we were raised, maybe previous relationships, we can sometimes have a narrative in our mind like, I don't want to lose them, so I've got to please them all the time. Or maybe that spouse is a bit narcissistic and they're trying, they think that you're just there to please them and to meet their every need. And so you feel that and you're just, running yourself ragged mentally, emotionally, and maybe even physically trying to please them all the time that you just it's sucked the joy of life out of you. And it's also misplaced where you're supposed to put your worship, and that's only to God. Only God receives our worship. Again, we are called to serve our spouse, but not in this kind of way that is unhealthy that we're describing. And so that's definitely something that you need to bring to your spouse and say, listen, I feel like I'm burnt out right now because I feel like I can never really please you enough.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's coming from me or if it's coming from you, but I want to talk about it. That's a really calm way to say that because you may not know yet. And that's where you both can pray and say, God, help us to really see, like take the blinders off and help us to see, where our marriage dynamic is a bit unhealthy because God doesn't want you to live like that. I mean, that can create a really unhealthy codependent dynamic as well, where one of you is feeding off that and the other is constantly like trying to make that person happy. And it's just not how we're called to be in marriage.
No.
And it definitely will burn you out. It definitely will burn you out.
Gosh, that will burn you out. And if you feel like you are in a dynamic like that, mm-hmm. where there's just this unhealthy disconnection between reality and the expectations or communication issues in marriage, I want to quickly provide a couple resources. First off, our ministry, XO Marriage, has an aspect of the ministry called marriage mediation, which I think is maybe the single most important aspect of what this ministry does.
Yeah.
It as a trained team of mediators. We've gone through the training ourselves. It's a powerful program. Can meet with you in person at the office in Dallas-Fort Worth area or virtually from anywhere in the world and take you through a full day or 2 full days, depending on your situation. And over that process, a very specific structured process, the breakthrough that you can experience to get on the same page and to work through some issues and to create a game plan moving forward, it really is potentially life-changing. We've seen it transform marriages. We've seen it take people from the brink of divorce to a place of thriving. And we want to share that with you. So if you go to XO Marriage Help, XOMarriageHelp.com, you can find out all about mediation or just our ministry's website, which is xomarriage.com. Yeah. You can get to it from there as well. So I encourage you to check that out. And I think that Yeah. And if not that, talk to a counselor in your area, talk to somebody about it. You don't have to figure this out on your own. Even Ashley, now that she's finished her biblical counseling degree, has a limited amount of help, that she can give through like virtual sessions at ashleywillis.net.
Yes.
So you can check that out as well. But talk to somebody is the thing. When you get stuck in this rhythm and the two of you just keep butting heads or you keep going through the same cycle, I found that really the only practical way to break out of it is to get an objective, professional, outside, third-party voice to speak into the situation and help guide you through it. And that's biblical, that's practical, that's healthy. And so, find that person.
That's right. And that really brings me to something that I want to point out. Last week, Dave gave a little plug for a talk that we did at our home church, our beloved home church, Stevens Creek Church. That's Stevens with a V. If you want to look it up, stevenscreekchurch.com, where we did a talk on mental health. And I touched on something in that talk that I feel like I want to share on this episode because I think it will help you and your spouse to really talk through these three things that can often lead to burnout if not done well, but can also help you overcome burnout, which we're going to talk more about next week. But there's three major areas of your life that if you feel like you found yourself in burnout or you're maybe on the edge of falling into burnout, this is something you need to consider. And I call it the three C's. So the first one is think about what are you consuming? Like on a daily basis, what are you consuming? And I think when you hear that word consume, you think food, which I am talking about that somewhat, but really, what are you consuming through all your senses? What are you eating? Are you eating right? Because maybe you're feeling bad and feeling burnout because you're going on fumes, like you're just living off caffeine and sugar, or maybe you're, drinking too much alcohol daily and you're just never really feeling good because you're never really getting good sleep and never really able to do the exercise that your body needs. You're never getting outside. Like, think about that. Like, what am I consuming? Am I taking my vitamins? Am I drinking my water? Things as simple as that can really affect how we feel. Also think about, what are your eyes taking in? Like, what are you watching? Are you scrolling social media all the time? Are you constantly trying to find the next distraction? And I'm not just talking to you, I'm talking to me too. Like, I've had to really evaluate these things. Like, what TV shows are you watching?
Well, I know for sure they're listening to a great podcast.
It's a great podcast. Yeah. Well, we haven't even talked about ears yet. So like, what are you listening to? Are you listening to positive podcasts that pour into your life? Are you listening to podcasts that, are just about, pop culture gossip, and it's just making you think about people that you'll never meet.
Well, and for you, it was, true crime is all the rage. And
we shows and podcasts.
We both like it, to be very frank. We like it.
I think you're a more recent fan.
I'm getting more into it. But we actually went through a season where it was like constant true crime, and it was starting to mess with her.
Podcasts, yeah.
Because you're listening to that much murder. It's going to have an
weigh
impact.
You down.
And one day she was just acting like really stressed, and I said, how many murders have you listened to today?
Yeah.
And it was kind of a laugh, but also a wake up moment of like, wow, I'm consuming a lot of true but dark content, and I need to balance that out. I need more worship music. I need more positive things coming in. And so we've both tried to be more aware of that, because most of the news we consume is negative news. Most of what the world just feeds us is junk food for our brain. And so when we can listen to Christian podcasts, when we can listen to worship music, when we can just turn off the noise and get out in nature and listen to the sounds of God's nature all around us, it's something that it replenishes us. It restores and renews the mind. And
we need that.
We need that. Otherwise, if we're just consuming junk all the time, it's going to make an impact. It
definitely does. When you asked me that question that day, it was kind of funny, but it was also a very true question that I needed to ponder. And it really caused me over the course of those following weeks to look at my queue for my podcast that I listen to on a daily basis or weekly basis. And there were a lot that I removed. I was like, I'm not going to listen to that one anymore. I have less true crime podcasts that I listen to now. And I have more positive podcasts. Some are faith-based. Some are just funny podcasts. Some are interesting. Like, I'm kind of a nerd, so I listen to things like How I Built This, like about companies and how people built their companies. And I also, I don't know. I like a wide variety. I'm an avid, I know we're podcasters, but we are big, podcast listeners as well. And so when I'm on a walk, I often, I went through last year listening to a Bible podcast where within a year's time, I listened to the entire Bible. And I thought that was really fruitful. I love worship music. I love sometimes just turning it off, like you said, and just listening, to the sounds of nature or just having silence. It's really nice. And it really, it just is something for recalibrating your spirit and just getting your mind and your heart on the right things. I talked about the 5 senses in consuming. Get outside. Like, what are you feeling? Like, there's something called grounding that is kind of something that people are getting back to. This is something that is so like, oh yeah, of course that's helpful. But all grounding is like literally taking off your shoes and your socks, walking onto the ground, like get on some grass, get on some sand, get on some soil, and like literally spend time outdoors. And for like 10 or 15 minutes, just be outside and be outside with your full skin touching the ground. Okay. There's literally like neuroscience behind like the benefits of this. Like it's amazing what it can do for you, for your body, mind, and spirit. And so get outside and do that. Go garden. Like getting in the soil is good for you. Just getting and feeling the natural elements of the earth it's something so good for you. I mean, I remember years ago, we went to Estes Park, Colorado. And like one of our favorite things we did was we took off our shoes and we got in the little river that was right there. And I remember feeling like just, I don't know, it did something for my mind, body, and spirit. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And I think you were even brave enough and you drank out of that. Cause it was a moving stream where you were like, I'm going to drink this water. I don't know. I hope that was okay. I mean, you're still going
I'm still
strong,
alive,
like
so.
20 something years later. But there's something just so cool about getting in nature and feeling, letting your body feel God's creation. It's really great. And even just touching, your spouse, like having the coziness and the intimacy of, just having the human touch, with your spouse. So really think about, what am I consuming? So that's the first C. The second C is the calendar. And this is such a big one. Like, what's on my calendar? Am I running myself, ragged? Am I distracted and feeling burnout because we're just so busy?
Yeah. The 3 C's calendar for me is the one that's most convicting, I think, because when you look at the calendar, it tells you what you value. Mm-hmm. It's staring you right in the face. It's like, all right, these are the things I'm making time for. And so my time's our most precious commodity. And I'm investing in these things. Is this the best use of the time?
Yeah.
With what we're doing consistently, what we're putting on that recurring calendar, that's so important. The special events we're allowing on the calendar, the travel we're allowing on the calendar. What is the calendar saying about us? Because how we're spending our time is going to have an amazing and immediate impact in our overall mental health.
And I'm telling you, sometimes the greatest thing you can do to relieve your burnout, to avoid your burnout even, is taking something off the calendar. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I will admit I'm an introvert, and the older I get, the more introverted I get. I mean, I've always known I'm an introvert. Like I was the kid that would I was a very social person my entire life, very involved in like all kinds of clubs, and I did marching band in high school.
Introverts love people.
Oh, I love people.
I think that there's this
people.
misconception that like extroverts love people, introverts just don't love people.
That's just not true.
That's not at all what it is. It has to do with what recharges you.
Right.
Like, are you recharged in a group, or are you recharged alone? Mm-hmm. And would you prefer to be in a large group, or would you, if you're going to interact, would you prefer in a large group to have a meaningful one-on-one conversation? Mm-hmm. It's those kinds of questions. It's not like loving people versus hating people. That's not it at all. Introverts, tend to have, they can have the most meaningful
really
relationships.
Deep friendships. Yeah.
So I want to dispel that myth right off the bat, because, because you love people. We love meeting people. We love, you love ministering to people. You've got great and deep, meaningful friendships. But
like our meet and greets are like my favorite part of what we do, and hearing your all stories at our events at the EXO.
You also need, both of us need a pretty significant amount of time alone to recharge.
We do. And so I knew even as a kid, I remember specifically in high school, my mom pointed it out and I'm so grateful. My parents noticed this about me and also didn't make me feel bad about it, because I'm pretty sure my mom is like a major extrovert. She denies it, but that woman is an extrovert. Oh, yeah. She extroverts very well. But I remember I would come home from school and I literally would go in my room with the door closed for like hours. I mean, I would say hi to my family, but they never made me feel bad about that. And even till this day, Dave knows that about me. I mean, you're kind of an ambivert. You're a little bit of both. That is a thing.
I can, depending on the mood and the day, like I can, the older I get, I do think I've gotten more introverted.
Yes. And also with what we do, I feel like, because we extrovert a lot, I feel like that's why personal time we're more introverted. But like, you know, I still till this day, I'm an introvert. And even the other day, I was a little bit in a funk and Dave was like, what do you need? I said, I think I just need some time alone. And I didn't mean that as a cut to you, because sometimes time alone is literally being in the same room with you, but I'm just
No, I totally get it. Never make your spouse feel guilty for having needs that are different than your needs.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest marriage mistakes. People are like, well, I don't need sex that much, so you shouldn't. I don't need conversation that much, so you shouldn't. I don't need sleep that much, you shouldn't. Whatever it is that your spouse needs, help them have it to be at their best, instead of feeling like your needs is the perfect needs. Everybody's needs to look just like yours. So when she needs, I know that she's her best when she's able to get out, have some time alone, listen to a podcast, get a snack,
have a walk. Well, we'll walk together most of the time. But yeah, sometimes I do just need a snack. That's another thing I'm consuming. Sometimes you just need a snack, like your blood sugar's low, have a snack. But you know, when it comes to the calendar again, and like the time, I think that sometimes we just don't allow ourselves to have the time that we need to feel replenished. And like, I remember the other day when I was in the funk, you were like, what do you need? Hey, after we have this meeting, would you like to go on a drive? I got the kids, you go on a drive and you have your moment. And it's just so sweet to me as Dave's wife, like to know he's not like, well, I mean, I'm fine. Like, why can't you just get it together? It was like, no, what can I do to give you that time? And that really means a lot to me. And you've always done that. And it's so sweet. And I try to do that for you as well. I'm like, okay, what do you need? But I'm telling you, as an introvert, taking something off the calendar, I mean, there's memes about this, sometimes is the greatest thing, even though I love people, but taking something off, sometimes I'm giddy about it. Sometimes.
Well, and especially in these seasons of burnout and stress, like with so much happening, we've got 4 kids that are all
running
into stuff
and
with travel schedule, a lot's going on. So when we can take something off the calendar, I feel a weight lifted, even if it's something small. Like, I mean, I had, there's one meeting I don't have to do. Oh my gosh. Like
I feel like a new man. Yeah.
So give yourself permission to, I mean, the biblical standard for this, I think, it would be like pruning. Jesus talked a lot about when you prune stuff, it really helps growth. And pruning means cutting away good parts of a plant, healthy branches from a plant, cutting it away, because you have to do that in order to create health and growth. Right. And you have to prune your calendar a lot. We have to prune our calendar a lot. It's like, what are those recurring things that we got to end that? We got to end it. It has to have an end date. We can't just keep adding. You have to take stuff off as well.
And a lot of times it's a not now. It's not like an all out no. I mean, there's some things maybe you do need to just have an all out no and never. Like, we don't want to ever do that. But for most things, I mean, they're probably good things that are on your calendar, and it's just too many too soon in this season. Just put it on the shelf. It's a not yet. It's a not right now. And I'm telling you, you'll feel so much freedom in that. All right. So we've already gone through 2 of the 3 C's. We have, what are you consuming? What is on your calendar? And the third one is, who is in your community? And let me tell you, this is a big one, because sometimes we're just feeling burnout because we're with people that are burning us out. Like, maybe there's people that are wanting too much of our time or too much leadership in our life. Like,
or speaking negativity
or just speaking
bringing
negatively.
Drama.
Yes. And I'm telling you, all those reasons can make certain people in our community, whether they realize it or not, they can be a cause to burnout. And so what do we do with that is we bring in more people that are believers that are going to pour into our life. We can pour into their life, but we also put boundaries in place with the people that are maybe not pouring into our life in a healthy way, like that are trying to take up maybe too much space, so to speak, in our life. Like I said, leadership, or just bringing drama that isn't even something that we're called to deal with, like it's like, this isn't even my problem, but you're making it my problem. And this isn't to say that like, there's not times where we have hard moments with people in our life. I mean, a lot of times it's people that we love that we might feel like are pulling us down. That doesn't mean you're going to cut them out of your life, but you can put boundaries in place that are saying like, listen, no, I can't do that at this time on this day, maybe in 2 weeks, like you're giving more space in between. Sometimes you need to put some space in between people who feel like you're at their beck and call. like, don't text back immediately. Okay.
Yeah. And me, like, I tend to respond quickly and what happens,
which I love that
is
about
I respond
him.
quickly, then certain people will just respond more and more and more.
It's more and more and more.
And Ashley's like, you got to give some space there. You can't let people feel like they've got 24/7 access to you, or you're going to feel like you're on call constantly.
Yep.
And then I do, and then I feel burned out. And so she's helped me with that. Ashley is such a good and loyal friend to so many people, but there are certain folks in her life, and I can think of one recently where this person is a great friend, a kind person, but also every time that Ashley's ever around this person, this lady is sharing negative things. It's always negative.
And she has gone through hard stuff.
And there has been hard stuff.
But she's lost other friends over this.
But it's always negative. It's always negative with her marriage. It's always negative with everything. It's like hanging out with Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. It's just always negative. And Ashley, but this person,
and I love her,
a loving and kind
She's
and
wonderful.
Loyal person. And Ashley is that to her. But Ashley's had to put some kind of healthy boundaries in place, because she knows, well, when I get with this person, it's going to be a lot of negativity, and I want to listen and show empathy.
Yeah.
But when you've been friends with somebody for years and years, and every time you're with them, it's always negative, that's not just a tough season they're going through. Some of that is like a mindset that isn't totally healthy.
Right.
And so you have to safeguard that. Like, listen, you got to look for some positive. You have to look for some reasons to show gratitude. And what you're going through is real stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
And I empathize with that. But if you've got those people in your life where it's always negative, every conversation with them, it's going to be negative. You might have to lovingly pray for them from a distance, get with them a little bit less.
Right.
And that's not being cold-hearted. I think that's safeguarding your own heart.
Well, I remember just recently, I talked to you because of this burnout season I've been in. And I just said, because I got a text from this friend, and it immediately sent me a little bit like,
because you knew as soon as
I just felt like the pressure, and I was like, and it wasn't because I don't want to get with her, or I love her. I've known her a long time, but I said, Dave, in this particular season, in this moment, I just don't have it. Like, I don't have the emotional energy at this particular moment this week to be there in the way that I know she needs me in the season. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a little bit more time. So I said, I need like 2 weeks and I can get together, because I just knew I needed to pray up about it. I needed to have the emotional capacity, because I don't want to be just this friend who's not really genuinely, connecting with her. And so I think sometimes, and some of you, this may sound kind of harsh to some people, but I feel like most people can relate to this, because and I know I'm in the counseling space where, and Dave even though Dave's not officially a counselor, he's a pastor, and we hear a lot of people's greatest moments, but we also hear like their hardest moments.
Yeah. And
with that, it can be like burden on top of burden on top of burden, and it can wear on you over time. And that's why they say every pastor and counselor needs a counselor. And that is true. I mean, I just actually met with a fellow counselor friend of mine, and I feel like we always end up in a counseling session for each other, because we're both bearing this weight. But with that, I have to have boundaries for myself. And sometimes it ends up, going even with my kids and saying, like, right now, I can't, if it's an emergency and it's a needed moment, obviously I'm going to engage in that moment. But even sometimes with our children, if I've just come off a really heavy counseling appointment, I'll say, you know what, can I go on a walk with you later and talk about that? Because I just need a moment to decompress from this really hard counseling appointment that I just had. And I think most people, who know and love you will respect that. Now, if those people don't, and they, then I would say you might have to be a little more direct about it. I mean, I think sometimes people, if they don't get it, you have to be your own advocate and be a little more direct, still in a loving way about it. But I think if we don't advocate for ourselves, I mean, my goodness, that's a fast track to burnout. In fact, a lot of these helping professions like counseling, doctors, pastors, teachers, any kind of helping profession has a high burnout rate. And it's because a lot of times we don't put boundaries in place. We aren't our own advocates, and we can't help out of an empty place. Like we can only give what we have. And so if we don't have, like our faith is kind of dead right now because we're not praying, because we're just so worn slap out, or if we're, not really tending to our own emotional health because we're constantly trying to give everybody else tips on their own emotional health, we're essentially going to end up hurting someone, not taking that time to invest in ourselves and our own mental and emotional health. I mean, we know this, right? And then we're going to hurt our marriage because we're not advocating. And so sometimes it takes even stepping away for a season. You caused me to do this. You said, you know what? You just finished your counseling program and your practicum. Don't jump right into counseling people. So I took about 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm taking a break.
It's only a few that you're doing right now. It's very, very, very limited.
Very limited.
Because we've got so much, we have, our full-time work with XO, which we love. We're raising 4 kids. There's just a lot going on. So anything we take on in addition to that, right, it's eating away at the small margins already.
Well, and we want to do well. Like, yeah. All of us want to do the things that God has called us to well. All the relationships well, our marriage, our parenting well, our jobs well. And so I think sometimes we'll take something on because we feel like we have to for financial reasons, or maybe we're people pleasers, or maybe there's some expectation somebody put on us or whatever it is. But I think we have to step back and really pray through and say, God, help me to know the right timing. Like, help me to know that. And I it's good too to be there as a married couple for each other and say, sometimes we need to listen to our spouse, especially when we are ourselves in a burnout season, and take what they have to say to heart. Because I know, in the midst of my hard burnout after my program, it's been really good to have you say, you need to take a rest day today. Like, I really think that would be helpful for you. Or, you know what, let's pause. I mean, I was talking to my mom and sister, and mom was like, I've never seen you so burnt out in my life over this time when I was going through the burnout. And she's like, I really think you need to, just be careful what you put on your calendar. I mean, even, cause she's my mom and she knows me, and she's like, just, this is, you're really tired. You're really burnt out. Like, you take a moment. And I think we need to listen to those people who know us well, who have our best interests at heart, and just really, allow them to speak that into us, and then be an advocate for ourselves and for our families and our relationships, and take the rest that we need.
Man, that's so good. Guys, I hope that has encouraged you today. There's so much practical in there, just starting with the 3 C's.
Yeah.
If you really will focus in on that, ask yourself, what am I consuming? What's on my calendar? Who's in my community? That alone could be just a filter that you put decisions through that could make a life-changing impact. Do us a favor, share this episode. I promise there are people in your life who need this reminder. There are so many people just silently struggling with burnout and with mental health issues and stress. And I think that this conversation could be meaningful to them. Thank you so much for being part of this. We'd love to hear from you guys. You can write us on Instagram at Dave and Ashley Willis. Check out the ministry's website. It's xomarriage.com. And come to one of our live events. We've got some great ones coming up. Just hit the conferences tab on the website, and we would love to meet you in person anytime. God bless. We'll see you soon.
Bye, guys.